Let's get the beer off the screen. This is serious stuff now. Good morning, everybody. Just in case you hadn't noticed, we are living in crazy times at the moment, and there's so much going on, it's very difficult to know where to start. But I'm going to start with three developments that we pick up in the Distribution Circulation Monitor, which I'm going to call DCM for short, because my tongue stalls over the full phrase. But three key developments there, all of them digital, the growth of the digital magazine newsstands, all of them expanding very quickly geographically. The second is the rebirth of Apple News as Apple News Plus, a free news stream with a paid digital magazine service bolted on like a Frankenstein's monster on the back. Personally, I don't think it's going to survive in its current format, and Apple will lose interest in it. Amazon will not lose interest in what is going on. You'll be hearing from Amy Tipper in a few minutes' time. Amazon is very focused on news and magazines and is testing all kinds of different things in different markets, print and digital, subscription and single copy, and you'll be hearing from her what they are up to. Now, each of those three developments on its own add up to sort of competition and disruption, and with a trend towards the subscription model and a trend towards digital platforms. But there are some major positives behind those developments as well. All of them underline the value of paid content. The Amazon developments underline the value of print, and that print still lies at the center of the magazine experience. And Amazon also underlined the value of the single copy as the entry point into a longer, deeper customer relationship. And all of them offer opportunities for existing supply chain players to have some part in it. You've seen already there's a workshop with Readly and Wessenden, the symposium tomorrow, where they talk about their joint venture to enter into the Swiss market. And Amy from Amazon will be telling you shortly about how they are using a press wholesaler in Hamburg to fulfill the single copy fast delivery service. But ultimately, standing back from the detail, all of this activity is stimulating reading, and all of it is bringing news and magazine brands to a bigger, younger, more digital audience, and that's the background to the DCM. Over the last 6 years, each report has had a different theme, a different feel to it. The priorities have changed from year to year up to 2018, when last year confidence was beginning to recover with the underlying business indicators looking a little more robust, and Distripress members showing increasing business confidence and looking at the world slightly more positively. Now in 2019, there is a different mood once again. The market is tough. It is fast-moving and massively disrupted. Confidence and business performance, those two key metrics which we monitor, are down year on year in 2019. And the dominant theme running through the whole survey is how the world is fragmenting in almost every area: economic patterns, tech trends, political and social developments, business models, and ultimately the end consumer as well. Now, that change is taking place at different rates in different markets and in different ways in different parts of the world. And it is more difficult than ever to generalize about what is going on, and there can be a feeling that there's absolute chaos out there. But beneath the confusing surface turbulence, there are more stable signs. There are hotspots of positive growth and activity. There are patterns behind the volatility which are the same from year to year, and tracking them and monitoring them is very much what the DCM is all about if we are going to steer our way around the black holes and capitalize on the hotspots so that the brave and the agile can and are surviving and prospering. A reminder of what the report looks like. It's based on 4 pools of data, 2 of them being from Distripress. There's a Distripress survey of 85 members. There's a deeper dive where we drill down into 21 of those key focus markets in more detail. And each year we ask Distripress members what it is you want to see from the report. So there's an ongoing interest in tracking the core operational metrics, the top-line sales trends. There's a growing interest in tech development, and there's a big chapter there on what is going on tech-wise in retail, in logistics, and at the consumer end of the business, and an appetite for new business models to find out more and revenue diversification. Now, as Tracy and Corinne have already mentioned, there are 2 new elements to the report. Getting ahead of myself there in my excitement. There we go. 2 new elements. There's the political geography. So we've got coverage for the first time of social and political issues, and we have a deeper dive into what are the hot markets by interest category around the world. So the full report will be available for download shortly from the Distripress site. The executive summary, in print of course, none of this digital nonsense, will be available for the coffee break so you can see in outline what is going on. And a reminder, early start, 8:30 on Wednesday morning. There's an hour where Q&A, we can go through in more detail what this big report actually has to say. But to pick out 3 figures from the report, 182 billion US dollars. That's the total value of news and magazines in 2019. And as Corinne has already pointed out, that's bigger than books, it's bigger than music, it's bigger than video games, it's bigger than radio or cinema. 91% of total global news and mag circulation revenues are still accounted for by print, and 6%, that's the percentage of global press sales that are cross-border. So it's a specialist but still very significant part of the global business, but a business that is increasingly affected by social and political issues, which leads on to this particular chapter, the politics of distribution, the growth of fake news on social media, the interference of politicians, the growing sensitivities of content that crosses borders into different countries. All of these factors are adding complexity to the already turbulent N&M landscape. Each year, RSF reports on the state of press freedom around the world, and you'll be hearing from them shortly, going into their map of places you never want to go on holiday, and certainly not with Thomas Cook, because you'll never get back again. But that is the map for RSF. We've added a new element, which is a survey of Distripress members about the availability of financial support in their domestic markets, and that falls into those 3 key areas: supporting content creation, distribution-related funding, and what we've called social support. Now, it's clear that this whole area requires more collaboration and cooperation, both within each individual country, of individual companies getting together to represent the media to government bodies, but also across territories where local learnings in one country can be shared with others. So the political aspect is a new element to this year's report. Let's just go through and look at the operational metrics. Here are the key headlines. As I've said, business performance and confidence are both well down on last year, but export trends, sales are down but steadying. Profitability is robust. 71% of publisher exporters are reporting that their operations are in profit. It's slightly down on last year, but it's still a good, robust figure. Promotional budgets are reducing and are being targeted into fewer, more specific markets. The retail universes for news and magazines are a big and complex area on its own, but certainly in the 21 key focus countries we're looking at, the rate of decline has accelerated slightly, and it's about 5% down year on year in 2019. Looking at the internal organization, change is still significant, it's accelerating, but there is more of a sense of it being under control and knowing what the key priorities are. And then stepping back and looking at supply chain change, this is still fast, but is slowing down, seems to be, in terms of the pace of change. But where the change is taking place, it is more radical. And there are some big discussions in virtually every market about the supply chain and whether links in the chain can be taken out. So those are the headlines about the metrics. Let's go behind the metrics, and we haven't got time to look at this in any detail, but this is the geographical hotspots. Those two charts, newspapers on the left, magazines on the right, track the 6 key regions with 2 dimensions. So the horizontal axis is the year-on-year percentage change in circulation revenue. So the further over to the right, the better the picture is. The further over to the left, the weaker the trend actually is. And the other axis is size. So the higher you go up the chart, the bigger the market. Asia Pacific clearly dominating both charts. But within Asia Pacific, there's a real range of performance as to what individual countries are actually doing. Latin America has the most robust performance in terms of newspapers, but again, massive differences from country to country. And Africa, not the Middle East so much, they're lumped together in that chart, but Africa showing some real hot spots in terms of magazine performance. But the performance of individual countries within each of those regions is becoming more varied, and the balance between newspapers and magazines varies a lot from country to country. So that's an indication of the geographical hotspots. The other area in terms of hotspots is market sector, and we've divided up the market into those categories. The green bars show where there is generally still global decline, but there are local hotspots in particular countries where there is growth. And the markets are puzzles, children, teenage, food and wine as being particularly hot ones. The yellow bars are those in the middle, and the bottom ones are where there is serious and widespread decline. Adult computing, computer games, men's lifestyle. The long-term downward trend on those is accelerating, but there's a whole chapter on that in the report to see where those hotspots are. So what do we do about it? What are the immediate priorities? 2 areas stand out with strong scores in this year's survey. The first is improving the efficiency of internal processes and practices, and that's edged ahead of the number 2 area, which was number 1 last year, which is developing new products and services. So both of them together show that there is a clear sign of diversification, of bringing on new revenue streams. Interestingly, the scores for diversification are stronger with the middlemen, with wholesalers and distributors this year than for publishers, as it's the middlemen who are really focusing on diversification activities, some of it successful, some of it not, but focusing on that even more than last year, with grinding cost control remaining a permanent feature of every operation, and worryingly, 2 areas of important investment where the scores have dropped significantly year on year. The first is IT and tech, the second is staff. And it's clear that a number of organizations are simply not building those competencies and investing in those areas that they need to in order to survive in the long term. which leads on then to looking forward to the future, what the new opportunities are for publishers. These remain the two key priorities which featured in last year's report, but are now being mentioned with a lot more focus and a greater sense of urgency. Growing the international footprint, although that is led by digital rather than by print, and shifting the focus from ad hoc single copy activity to repeat subscription-based mechanics. Now, if the publisher developments are becoming more focused, particularly on these two areas, then the response of wholesalers and distributors has been to create an even longer list of possible diversification activities. And those two areas remain the key ones. Growing the range of publishing services, actually, as we've seen from the 7 days presentation, of morphing from pure logistics suppliers into marketing operations, and also supplying non-press products through the current press wholesaling network. So again, a lot of detail in the report as to what that means in practical terms. So putting it all together, what does it all mean? That clearly the world of press distribution remains very tough, tougher than last year, according to the key metrics that we monitor. In addition, the pace of change is accelerating, yet there seems to be a greater acceptance of the change and a more proactive and creative approach to managing the turbulence, embracing more of a pop-up mentality, which is a clear theme, being able to operate at speed and with agility to running tactical one-off activities at the same time as still having a strategy and developing a longer-term plan which will require more investment. Yet there is a real concern about investment for the future, particularly in the area of tech capability and investing staff. There is also a sign that the interests and the priorities of publishers and the other links in the supply chain are growing apart. Publishers are focusing ever more on digital and subscription models, whereas wholesalers and distributors are becoming more varied and radical in their own diversification plans. There is an acceptance of the decline, the ongoing reduction in the established press retail universe around the world, but developing other retail outlets at the same time. As a result of all this, there are clear calls for all links in the supply chain to work more closely together to drive change that may be a lot more fundamental and radical than those ever considered before. As we've seen already, a growing theme of all this is the political dimension of news and magazines, as political interference in the production and distribution of content comes at the same time as the need to support quality journalism financially. What is clear from this year's survey is that there is a real change in attitude, where the priority now seems to be to identify and pursue a more limited range of growth opportunities rather than trying to do too many things, and probably most of them badly, rather than trying to do too many things at the same time. But essentially, it's about optimizing the hotspots whilst avoiding the black holes. Thank you very much, and come along on Wednesday to hear the nitty-gritty. Thank you.